In the previous episode, Brendan, Held, and I talked about how our upbringing shapes us, and he vulnerably shared about growing up in a toxic home. In this episode, we're diving further into his current relationship, his fourth marriage with his current wife from Brazil, which he met on 90 Day Fiancé, and we're talking about how this one is going to be different from the other ones. Stay tuned and enjoy.
This is one thing I did with my wife. She's from Brazil, right? And I knew I'd have to marry her, bring her to America, go through all that thing. And I was like, I'm not going to do this unless I know this is right. Plus the fact that she's, so much younger than me. And then it doesn't matter who you are. Initially, everyone has that thought in their mind. Do they want to marry me to get a green card and come to America, right? Everyone has that thought. And then once I get past that thought, right, and then I start worrying about the real stuff. What are your thoughts on this? What are your opinions on this? How do you feel about this? We didn't exactly align 100% initially, but we both did make shifts that we thought were fair and realistic. And so I'll tell you honestly, straight up. So we don't allow each other to have opposite sex friends. We just don't. That's something we decided on early before we ever got married. And I know that's not for everyone, and some people consider that controlling or whatever the case may be, but we didn't align on that in the beginning, but we both adjusted to align on it, and we both now think it's the best decision. So it's just examples like that. Like, you don't always have to align. You just have to be able to make moves that allow you to align together.
Right. As long as that is something both parties agree on, and to each their
Right.
own, right? Every relationship is going to have their things where that's important and what is going to be their non-negotiable. And as long as that's something both parties agree on, I don't see the harm. I definitely do believe that we're all a result of what we've been exposed to, and all of these situations has taught us something and exposed something in us. And I do you know what it is to in you guys' past that kind of has made this the situation? Like, I'm not like saying that I think it's crazy or wrong or anything. I'm mostly curious what triggered that response. What are some elements in your life that triggered that situation in both of your instances?
A lot of it is me, right? So one of the things that I had when listening to your podcast, I wanted to say to you, because sometimes you think you're picking the wrong guy, right? But it's more about where that man is in his life. And so I can tell you, while I have been faithful, I had never been with a woman until my wife today that I didn't want to be with someone else during that time, meaning at least sexually. Like, I would see girls and be attracted to them. I would even convince my exes to have threesomes with me or whatever, just because they weren't enough for me. That wasn't enough for me. And that's where I was in life. So I always had this kind of cheater brain. And so, even though I never did it, in my mind, it's obviously kind of cheating, right? Because I'm thinking about other women. And so when I got married the third time, she read me really well. She knew that she thought I was too flirty with women, and she just didn't like seeing me interact with other women. She just, I don't know, it turned her off. It made her feel threatened. So she actually came up with that rule, and she said, "Look, we shouldn't have friends of the opposite sex. I don't need you being tempted." She said, "I'm weak too. I'm a human. I don't need to be tempted." And so we actually had our marriage for most of the time that way. And then towards the end, our kids were little. There was one guy who was a single dad, and my oldest son with her happened to be best friends with his son. And she said, "Hey, I want to take Max to the park to play with so and so. And oh, by the way, his dad will be there bringing him because he's a single dad. Is that a problem?" So she okayed it with me. So in my mind, I'm thinking she has nothing to hide, right? She's
Right.
out in the open about this. And then as time progresses, she's doing more things with this guy and taking my sons along every time. And in my mind, I'm like, well, she's being open about it, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
Well, when we ended up getting divorced, guess who was her first boyfriend?
There you go. Yeah.
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 So I literally let her, based on our agreement, be friends with one guy, and that one guy ended up being the problem. So it's me. So I'm the one that, was like, my wife doesn't have a jealous bone in her body, or I should say very little. I have seen her get jealous a couple times, which is funny because she told me she's never been jealous ever in her life. Um, but she's much more easygoing and free than I am. But I did explain to her before we ever even got engaged or serious or anything, this situation. And, I kind of agree with it because I'm susceptible just like anyone else. And she was like, yeah, I can get on board with that. I can accept that. And so that's just the dynamic that we have.
Yeah. I like how you are introspective about all of these things, that you recognize that, like, yeah, it's definitely coming from a place where I was triggered in the past, and now we're trying to create an environment where we kind of eliminate temptation. And honestly, I kind of respect that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah,
A
no, I
lot of
do.
people will judge us for that, and that's okay.
Yeah,
So
I
be it.
understand that people recognize that some people do not need to set these boundaries, where they create an environment where the temptation is eliminated. So when you know that that is the case in your relationship, then I understand that that's something that you guys want to uphold. And for as long as that is a mutual agreement, I don't see why anyone else's opinion matters.
I feel that I don't, I did a podcast more recently, what it means to be a man in 2025, right? And one of the things I say in there is you cannot let the outside world drive what your relationship looks like with their thoughts and opinions and what they think is right and what they think is wrong. It completely has to be you, the two of you and your significant other. Whatever you guys agree on works best for you. Frankly, fuck what the rest of the world says because they're not living your life. They're not living your relationship. And you have to do what works best for you. And I really, really wish people would get on board with that. I get so sick of people talking about, controlling behavior. And I'm not saying there isn't times to recognize controlling behavior because people can be controlling and you do need to recognize when that happens and you do need to break away from it. However, if you're in agreed upon situations and you're reacting a certain type of way, and like let's just say my wife went to tell a girlfriend, oh, I'm not allowed to have male friends, and she doesn't communicate it the way I communicated it to you. Oh, he's controlling, you need to run, you need to get away from him. Like people just
Mhm.
want to label
Right.
things controlling without knowing the full story. And so, yeah, I get sick of hearing stuff like that.
I think the beauty of it is that when it comes to your situation too, is that, like, I mean, you're already sharing so openly about your past and how it shaped you. You're not oblivious or ignorant to why you are the way that you are. You are very aware of how all of these experiences with violence in the home and alcohol and drug abuse, you're very aware of how all of that shaped you. And you also recognize your triggers, and therefore you are creating environments that are helping you progress from that, right? You believed in love as a kid, and you wanted love, and you have continued to seek it out, right? And I
Correct.
think that is something that at the end of the day is really beautiful. And I think that if you were in any way very manipulative and very oblivious to whether or not you're creating like a controlling environment, like you wouldn't have reflected a single thing on anything in your past. And because you are, like, it just shows that the introspection is just creating awareness, as opposed to a toxic environment. So
Well,
I
thank
wouldn't
you.
I
I
wouldn't be
appreciate it.
worried based on what you're sharing, at least.
No, but I know how to communicate things, right? I have not only do I have a communications degree, I also outside of school have continued to learn about the power of communication because I also believe that's so very important in every relationships in your life, whether it's friends, family, kids, whatever it is. but not everyone has that same level of skill or expertise or understanding. And my wife, God love her, even though she's a lawyer and going to be a lawyer, she's very concise with things. She just sums things up in a sentence. And sometimes I have to look at her and I say, love, I need more words. I need more words. You got to give me more words. And so, yeah, so we can't necessarily relay the same things the same way. So I could say the same thing to you that she's saying to you, but you might understand it completely differently from her. And that's why, people really need to understand sometimes that there's just a communication breakdown in a
Mhm.
message. And but yeah, I've always been introspective. I've always tried, I still to this day am trying to grow and be a better man. It's my wife now. That's the first woman that I've ever been like, if this is the last woman I'm ever with the rest of my life, I'm good with that. And then not only that, I don't want to know a life without her. Right. And
Mhm.
so she was someone in the beginning that I would say things during fights and she just couldn't get over it. She couldn't let it go. She was starting to see me in a different light. She would say things after the fights were over that it was shifting how she saw me, period, altogether. And she was the driving force behind my changing during arguments, how I had to change the way I said things verbally because I didn't want to lose her.
Mhm. I think it's beautiful to hear how passionate you are about your relationship, and I do believe that at the end of the day, all of these relationships that we've ever been in, they shape us, right? And we get closer to home somehow. And sometimes that happens within relationship, and sometimes it happens through relationship. And nonetheless, they're all going to shape us into the best versions of ourselves if that's what we let it do. And when two people are mutually agreeing on how to progress in a relationship, then it can be a very long lasting, beautiful partnership. And I really do hope that for you guys. I would love for you to share with me. I do remember you mentioned that you had sons. Like how does being a father to sons make it so different for you? And how do you want to go about being the man, showing them the best example of what it looks like to be a man in a relationship?
Those are hard topics for me because I've always been someone that's, I would say, 99% honest person. I have told little white lies here and there, maybe to get myself out of trouble, whatever the case may be, maybe to spare someone's feelings. I've always been a pretty honest person. And I've always believed, my mom used to say to me all the time, and some of my relatives, do as I say, not as I do. And I freaking hated that. I hated hearing that so much. Like,
Mhm.
don't sit here and tell me how to behave and how to be when you can't do it yourself. So I,
Right.
I always believed in walking the walk. If you're going to say something and you're going to be something and you're going to do something and that's what you're going to promote, well, you better be doing it too. So I've always been like that. I've always led by example. And the hardest part for me is my oldest son. We were never, me and that was with my first wife. I actually found out she was pregnant when we got divorced. So I've never been with his mother while he was my son for the most part. We had a few months we gave it a go. So for as far as he remembers, we've never been a family together. And for the majority of his life, he lived in Ohio and I lived in Arizona. So it was a very separate relationship. And then my other two kids, they were pretty small, 8 and 6, when we got divorced. I have 50-50 custody, but it doesn't always work out that I get my 50% because of school commitments and stuff like that. So I get them less than 50% of the time. So I don't really get to be the dad I want to be. And that's the biggest disappointment in fatherhood for me is I feel like I've gone through so much and I've lived so much and I had to figure so many things out on my
Mhm.
own that I want to spare my children of that same path.
Yeah.
I want to light the path up and say, just walk down this path, and I promise you, you'll be glad that you listened to me. And they just won't. They just don't, and they won't. And it's incredibly frustrating knowing I have all this knowledge and I can help them so much, and they just don't care. They don't want to hear it.
Isn't it kind of I just noticed as you said that, yeah, introductory in this, you said that someone had told you, do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that kind of what is happening here too, though? You said that you have so much to teach them, in the sense that, like, well, you're telling them what to do, but are you showing them what to do?
I mean, I am. I have a great lifestyle. I have a wife that we're deeply in love, and our relationship is great, and I'm always there for them as a father. Believe me, when we don't get to meet or get together, it's not because of me. It's because of other commitments they have that they do with their mother, but it's never of me. I'm not the reason that our relationship isn't closer. I'm always there for them. When I don't have them, I call them on a regular basis just to say goodnight and I love you, or I'll text them just an I love you. And I think what it is they just take me for granted. They just know that I'm always there, and they're young, so they don't really think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there is nothing that's more unapologetic than being a parent, right? There's going to be times in our lives where they do appreciate you and want to be around, but then there's also going to be periods of life where that's not the case, right? I remember reading at some point where someone said that the first 10 years is the most important years to be present, because after 10 all they care about is their friends, and then
Yeah.
after that again is when they'll come crawling back to family and wanting those kind of values and those kinds of commitments that's more rooted in family, maybe later in the 20s. And that definitely deeply resonated with me, because when I was a teenager and in those age, I wanted nothing to do with my parents, and it hasn't really been until recently, until I started valuing what it is that my family does for me and what my parents do for me. And as kids, we really don't see that. We really don't acknowledge that. We don't even want to give you benefits for anything, because more often than not, we're actually looking at you for reasons why we're not the way that we want to be. And that's probably going to be true for a while with your kids as well, because they have their own set of experiences through all of the divorces that you went through, and your kids are inevitably going to be shaped by that themselves, meaning that you're probably going to be, well, a big reason why they're blaming a lot of bad things that are happening in their lives because of you, because that means they don't have to take accountability for their own things, you know? So that's kind of just the downside of being a parent, I imagine, is that you're probably, there's going to be times where you're the hero, but there's certainly going to be times where you're the villain as well.
Yeah, also very true, and that's no more true actually with my oldest son who's 27. I am 100%. Actually, me and his mother are both villains to him.
Yeah.
I won't get into all that, but yeah, that's so very true. They they don't want to take responsibility or accountability, and it's the parents' fault. And wait till you have children. It will change the way you look at your own parents for sure. And I don't, if you had a good childhood, it'll probably make you love them and respect them more. But if you're like me and you had a bad childhood, it actually created a big rift between my mother and I. Like, how could you have kids and then allow your kids to go through this? And so we had a really, really hard period in time because when I first had kids, it really changed the way I looked at her.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine that. I definitely am. I'm curious about that chapter of my life once when that arrives. But for now, I'm having a lot of fun, kind of observing, kind of the tracing back the steps of my own life and just kind of seeing how it's all connected to each other. But also joyfully so, right? Just connecting the
Yeah.
dots as opposed to kind of attacking the past. But I want to make sure that we're ending everything on a way of a more of like an exciting note. And I did read on your profile that you said that you're a diehard Ohio State fan. So I have one question for you. Hypothetically, if you could trade your worst heartbreak for one perfect Buckeye win, would you do it?
Ooh, wow, that's a good question. Um, so I love football, but I don't love football more than my own heart. So I would say no.
That's a good choice. I'm happy you said that. As much as I would love to see the Hawks win any day during the football season, I would never trade any of my heartbreaks either, because nothing shaped me more into the person that I am today than those heartbreaks.
Right, exactly.
I've had an incredible time getting to know you better, Brandon, and I'm really excited to be on your podcast as well. I'm curious to see what it's going to be like to be in the passenger seat, being the one having to receive the questions. And
Yeah.
I'm very happy you've been very graceful, and you've done a great job of communicating honestly about your experience and the way that you view everything that ever shaped you. And thank you for sharing your perspective. And I'm really excited to get to talk to you again.
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm grateful for meeting you and being on your podcast and being in the hot seat for you. And I just hope when you're in the hot seat for me, you'll be as exposing as I am.
There's no doubt about it.
Go check out the Life is Crazy podcast and hear Brandon share how life indeed is crazy. Have fun.